Welcome to this video, an overview of the 13 modern clans from the tabletop role-playing game Vampire: The Masquerade. Even dead blood carries within it a certain fortuity. Long ago, the blood of Cain fractured according to the will and deeds of his grandchildren, the antediluvians, who passed down certain unique abilities and difficulties to their own descendants, the clans. 10 of these clans have endured into the final nights. 2 fell victim to treachery and usurpation, and 1 may have been cannibalized by its own founder. But without further ado, the 13 vampire clans. Clan Brujah. The Brujah are a clan in which moderation is disfavored. There is a mistake of perception in categorizing the clan as rebels without a cause, defiant children, or aggressive contrarians. The Brujah's great gift and curse is a zeal which burns hotter in their unbeating hearts than it does for other kindred. What they believe with absolute certainty, and with absolute certainty comes the absolute license to bring their vision of the world into being, whether by words or by force, with rhetoric or with swords, and usually all of the above. After all, the ends justify the means. Indeed, the greatest internal conflicts within the clan concern whose vision deserves to come into being. The Brujah have always been a house divided against itself, going all the way back to the legendary murder and usurpation of the clan's blood from their first antediluvian by the kindred who would go on to sire the remainder of the clan. The most notable and infamous exemplar of Brujah utopianism was the city of Carthage, where vampires lived openly among mortals and whose downfall was orchestrated by the combined efforts of the other clans. Indeed, the fall of Carthage marked the beginning of the clan's decline from their lofty position as the warrior scholars of Cain's progeny to a malcontent rabble. By the Victorian age, intellechy, the Brujah philosophy of perfect mental and physical discipline, was the relic of a bygone age. The Brujah have been found in the thick of creating and breaking entire societies, vampiric and mortal alike. Despite their reputation as shrieking radicals, enough of the old Promethean philosophy remains in the clan that some Brujah are perfectly capable of expounding their ideas as they are dueling their fellows. One of the most violent schisms within the clan was the Anarch Revolt, when Brujah fledglings in Ancilla, rather than meekly submit to being served up to the mortal Inquisition, rose in rebellion against the elders who would have sacrificed them. By the end, Clan Brujah was not only split along ideological lines, but sectarian ones, some adhering to the newly created Camarilla, and others the Sabbat, which they believed themselves to be the true founders of, rather than the Lasombra or Tzimisce. In the final nights, the Brujah were well represented among the Camarilla, the Sabbat, and the Anarchs. Once, the Brujah embraced on the basis of 3 qualities: the zeal to believe in a cause, the strength of mind and wit to defend that cause, and the martial valor to fight for that cause to the death. These were the foundations on which intellechy, the Promethean ideal, were built. In modern nights, the Brujah tend to embrace those of a radical or criminal disposition, who either had a cause when they were alive or would be receptive to their sire's cause in death. As stated earlier, the Brujah are a clan of zealots, so much so that it is difficult for them to control their beasts. Their propensity for frenzy is legendary, as is their sensitivity to mention of this weakness. Clan Gangrel. Vampires are not, generally speaking, social creatures. The vampires of Clan Gangrel are less so than other kindred, preferring the company of beasts, both of nature and the ones dwelling in their souls. The Gangrel are shape-shifting predators and make no pretense of being what they are not. This has led to all sorts of rumors about the clan, that they share common ancestry with the Lupines, the Ravnos, and the Roma, or Gypsies. If there is any truth to this gossip, the Gangrel refuse to say, either from reclusiveness or disinterest. In antiquity, the Gangrel did not believe themselves to be the descendants of Cain at all, instead claiming to be the progeny of the warrior hunter god Inoya, and their enemies, the Ravnos, were the descendants of Churka, the city-building trickster god. This founding myth explains the Gangrel distaste for civilization, as well as the tendency of the ancient Gangrel to embrace from among the nomadic warrior tribes of the world, and then abandon their progeny to their fates. The worthy would survive and prosper, the weak would fail and falter. Shame would be properly heaped on the Gangrel who sired a weak child. This tendency has continued into the modern nights without much alteration. Though the great barbarian tribes of old are gone, the Gangrel's propensity for savagery is somewhat more subdued, but their preference for solitude is much the same as it always has been. Despite their reputation as reckless sires, the Gangrel do not give their blood to those they believe cannot survive alone. What little training a Gangrel gives to their child is rarely lengthy or gentle. Gangrel typically do not regard their children as companions or property, but as fellow predators. The Gangrel are fierce allies to those they choose to befriend, and terrible enemies to all who try to lord over them. In fact, their participation in any of the vampire sects is still viewed with some consternation, as Gangrel rarely play games of prestation, jihad, or adhere to the niceties and formalities of their fellow kindred. They acknowledge authority only when they must, lair wherever is convenient for them, hunt whoever interests them, and depart domains without so much as a by your leave, making them a source of constant frustration for princes. The Gangrel's attenuation to their beasts is also their bane, and the beast will mark their flesh every time a Gangrel succumbs to the frenzy. When the Gangrel emerges, they acquire certain bestial traits, such as animalistic eyes, growling voices, tails, fur, feathers, scales, and so on. This makes dealing with mortals and other vampires increasingly difficult and further reinforces the Gangrel's solitude, which in many cases suits them just fine. Clan Malkavian. Madness and sickness of the mind have terrified mortals for millennia. Such a terror is known and present among the kindred in the form of Clan Malkavian. Every descendant of Malkav suffers from some form of insanity. Despite gossip framing the Malkavians as eccentrics or buffoons, Malkavian insanity rarely manifests itself outright. More frightening than obvious lunacy is the fact that the children of Malkav can also infect others with their infirmities. But from whence comes such affliction? The Malkavians' madness is believed to originate with their antediluvian founder, Malkav, or perhaps their madness is Malkav. Little can be said of antediluvians that isn't well-worn fourth-hand hearsay or outright fabrication. Supposedly Malkav was a man of vision and prophecy, who may have been cursed by Cain with madness, or whose mind was broken by the weight of a truth that was not strong enough to bear, or that no one was meant to know. Few bothered to ask the Malkavians themselves. Even if they did know for certain, who could rely on the words of a lunatic? For the Malkavians, their madness is as much a gift as it is a curse. Insanity opens the door to things a Malkavian should not be able to know, past, present, and future. Additionally, the madness connects every Malkavian to their fellows, like the webs of a spider, where touching one strand sends vibrations throughout the rest of the web. Malkavians can speak to each other through the madness, though, as each Malkavian's insanity is unique, messages can be misunderstood by one another, to say nothing of outsiders. And outsiders often determine the fate of the Malkavians. Once they stood in high station among the clans of the Roman Empire. However, their perceived hand in the fall of Rome made them pariahs among kindred, tolerated for their insights under the best of circumstances, and hunted for their disruptive and destructive lunacy under the worst. Their status improved with the founding of the Camarilla, though none can say why so many lunatics joined the organization at once. Even more mysterious is how Malkavians select their progeny. To an outsider, Malkavians appear to embrace without rhyme or reason. Those who have made some study of the Malkavians believe that they are able to sense madness in others, to see imperceptible cracks in the psyche of their potential progeny, and then use the embrace to crack the entirety of the mirror of their progeny's minds. Clan Nosferatu. All vampires are cursed to struggle with the endless and inhuman hunger of the beast, but only the Nosferatu are cursed to wear the beast's visage as their own, forever. Every Nosferatu has the appearance of a monster, unmistakable as anything other than what they are, separated from kinship with humanity and other vampires. The embrace into Clan Nosferatu is painful, both physically and mentally, as the body twists and deforms to accommodate the tainted blood of the clan. Some Nosferatu find this curse to be more than they can bear and eagerly greet the sun. For those with the will to endure, or rather, those who lack the will for final death, their sanctuary is in the hidden places of the city, its crypts, catacombs, and sewers. But why must the Nosferatu bear this terrible fate? Like the curses of the other clans, the Nosferatu trace their predicament to the sin of their antediluvian father, whose actions so infuriated Cain that he made sure that none could ever mistake Absamiliard, or those who followed him, as anything other than monsters. It is this monstrosity of appearance that the Nosferatu inflict on their progeny. For some sires, the embrace is an act of utmost disdain, to take those who are arrogant in their beauty and destroy their vanity forever. For others, it is a dubious mercy, to give the power of Cain's blood to those who already have nothing. The Nosferatu have become masters of surveillance and stealth, thanks to their legacy as progeny of the great hunter. The sewer rats, as the Nosferatu are occasionally known, are also a practical clan. Their underground lairs and subterranean kingdoms are difficult to access, built so that ambushes and traps are easy to arrange and difficult to escape, while corpses can simply be made to disappear. They also ensure their survival among the kindred by making themselves indispensable to those who rule. They know everyone's secrets, and will gladly trade what they know in exchange for what little information they don't already possess, or a boon to be called in later. Additionally, the Nosferatu are one of the most united of the clans, so much so that it is rumored that even the sectarian divide of Camarilla and Sabbat is more of a difference of opinion than an actual war. Perhaps it is the centuries of disdain and abuse heaped on them by their fellow kindred, but there are rumors that there is something that the Nosferatu fear, an ancient terror that may spell the doom of their clan. Clan Toreador. To become a vampire is to be separated eternally from one's roots as a mortal, from both the simple pleasures and recurring pains of those whose days are limited and whose bodies will inevitably fail them. For a vampire, the soul grows as cold as the flesh. But for the vampires of Clan Toreador, every night is a struggle to keep the spark of mortal vitality and creativity within their reach, and by doing so, keep the beast at bay. More cynical kindred believe the Toreador simply prefer to keep their prey close to hand. The Toreador have a mixed reputation as patrons, muses, mentors, degenerates, hedonists, and posers. Many Toreador were artists, artisans, or adjacent to the arts in their mortal lives, and that interest continues into eternity. So, the Toreador, to satisfy their urges for the aesthetic, maintain a close proximity to those who produce and innovate art, mortals. In fact, the Toreador regard mortal society as a grand banquet, and each experience in person a new dish to be sampled and then moved on from. The most elevated Toreador do their part by cultivating the delicacies, so to speak, that they will eventually enjoy, spurring on talented artists to hone their skill or consider new techniques and ways of thinking. In doing so, the Toreador remain themselves, whatever that means to each one. Unlike the more brutish clans who chase down their prey like wolves hunting deer, the Toreador lure their prey to them. Toreador endeavor to be well-groomed, well-dressed, charming, but with just enough of a hint of danger that their prey is drawn in and fearful of rejection or disapproval. A Toreador often appreciates the difference between fashion and style, and can blend their style with the cutting edge of fashion, or adopt an appearance of vintage sophistication. Toreador run the gamut between the lonely, tortured artiste to the social butterfly who creates nothing but critiques everything. The Toreador have no organization per se. Status within the clan is a very nebulous and complex affair dependent upon a host of factors, such as appearance, wit, style, notoriety, generation, popularity, artistic achievement, patronage, progeny, and so on. Toreador gatherings are rarely pure social affairs. so much as they are gladiatorial melees, where words and wits substitute for swords and shields. The Toreador fixation on the aesthetic is also the clan's great weakness. It is an addiction greater than even blood. When a Toreador sees, hears, or even smells something beautiful, it awakens the passions and pleasures of their mortal life, and so holds the Toreador enthralled, so much so that the Toreador will even ignore attacks on their own person. Clan Tremere. Arbitrium vincit omnia. Will conquers all. This is the motto of House and Clan Tremere, a group of vampires who have upended the worlds of both mages and vampires in their endless quest for power through knowledge. This quest originated with the founder and namesake of the clan, Tremere, a mortal mage who was a founding member of the Order of Hermes, and who nearly usurped the order and subordinated it to his own house, twice. When the spells and potions of longevity that sustained him and his most trusted advisors appeared to be failing in the Middle Ages, he sought vampirism as the means to freeing himself from mortality once and for all. The Tremere seized eternity from the veins of the fearsome clan Tzimisce, and then clan status by devouring the antediluvian of clan Salubri, Solid. The Tremere are as marked by their great arrogance as they are by their great will. The harder they are pressed, the more dangerous they become. It was this necessity born of battle against their former allies in the Order of Hermes, and their vendetta with clan Tzimisce, that gave birth to many of their great weapons, the ever-evolving school of hermetic blood magic known as thaumaturgy, and the gargoyles, an army of vampire-like slave soldiers, bred and enchanted to fight and die for their masters. Through magical might, diplomacy, and sheer force of will, the Tremere have claimed a seat at the table of the great council of vampires, the Camarilla. Despite their position of equality with the other clans, they are still deeply mistrusted by all, and with good reason. Those of elder blood remember the villainy and usurpation that accompanied the Tremere's rise to power. The younger vampires see the secretiveness of the Tremere and are wary of sharing blood or turning their backs on the warlocks. For the Tremere's part, the hostility of their fellow supposed kindred is of little consequence to them. From their covens and chantries, the Tremere know that for however much they might despise one another, the rest of the world despises them more. From such loathing sprang a peculiar unity, an esprit de corps of Tremere superiority against all others, and a duty to avenge fellow Tremere against outsiders, lest any cracks or weaknesses become apparent in Lord Tremere's Great Pyramid, which was the greatest of his creations. All within the clan are bound, by training, oath, and blood magic, to obey their superiors, who are then bound likewise to their own superiors, who are then bound to their superiors, and upward, unto the pinnacle, Lord Tremere himself. This chain of blood bonding and indoctrination has produced a unity of Clan Tremere against outsiders unmatched by nearly any other clan, which is why the Tremere have survived into the modern nights, while their rivals have fallen into obscurity and oblivion. Clan Ventrue. The axe, the sword, and the scepter are the tools of kingship, representing judgment, war, and administration. For Clan Ventrue, these tools are both their birthright and their duty. Where the lesser clans regard the Ventrue as tyrants, both petty and grand, the Ventrue are, at least according to their own clan lore, compelled by noblesse oblige and a heavy burden placed upon the entire clan by the Dark Father, Cain. From the beginning, they have built the walls that protected Cain's get, issued the laws that kept mortal and Cainites in their proper places, led the wars against those who would destroy their own kind, and passed judgment on those who broke Cain's laws. In nights of old, the Ventrue were given the sobriquets of the warlords, as the place of a king was as much on the field of battle as in the courts of the nobility. With the end of the War of Princes, when vampires fought each other across Europe for land, wealth, and glory, and the rise of the Camarilla and the Sabbat, the nature of Clan Ventrue changed. The warriors, warlords, and kings slowly gave way to the merchant princes and guild masters, and then to the businessmen and politicians. By the modern nights, the warlords became the Blue Bloods, the current face of the clan. The makeup of Clan Ventrue may have changed, but the Ventrue penchant for rulership has not, and the tools have only become more sophisticated. Shields, horses, and lances have given way to limited liability corporations, party politics, and lobbying organizations. Influence has taken the place of titles. The Ventrue have always gravitated towards the higher strata of society, especially those parts they seek control over. They don't target police officers, ward bosses, or court reporters. They bend police captains, party chairmen, and editors-in-chief to their will. Other vampires, and even other Ventrue, might complain about the clan's tendency to acquire a stranglehold on the levers of power in a domain. But when the time comes and another vampire requires some aid, a Ventrue is usually able to clean up their messes. No Ventrue would ever openly confess to weakness, but a vulnerability, or rather, a refinement, according to the clan, is their inability to feed from any mortal who does not fit a certain set of parameters. Effectively, they may only feed from one type of person and gain sustenance, whether it be people of a certain profession, a phenotype, a place, or even a condition. Several Ventrue have fallen into torpor or suffered final death when their exclusivity was exploited by some unscrupulous enemy. Clan Lasombra. By contrast to the noblesse oblige of Clan Ventrue, Clan Lasombra are firm believers in the concept of divine right, particularly their divine right to lord over mortals and other vampires. But from whence does such a right originate? Simply put, where other vampires are shackled by darkness, the Lasombra have made darkness serve them. They accept none as their equals. Instead, they have only temporary allies, servants, and pawns. The founder of the clan was a creature of seas and shadows, named a god by fearful mortals of antiquity. In truth, he bore the deepest connection to the primordial darkness of the abyss, a gift which he gave to the rest of his clan. This fixation on divine right and godhood has spurred Clan Lasombra to seek and control religious organizations, whether from true belief in their place as divine monsters, or as another tool to control the bleeding herds of humanity. The religiosity of the Lasombra has led to some interesting divides in the clan, most notably when the Muslim and Christian Lasombra went to war against each other in Spain during the Shadow Reconquista. Then, the Anarch Revolt happened. A faction of Lasombra, led by the youngest of the Antediluvian's progeny, Gratiano de Veronese, destroyed the grandsire and pledged the clan to the Anarchs. Later, when the rebellious Anarchs reformed as the Sabbat, the Lasombra contributed their legacy of rite and ritual to the sect, creating many of the Auctoritas Rite, Ignobilis Rite, and later, the Paths of Enlightenment. The modern Lasombra have embraced the idea of divine and refined monstrosity, that if God has cursed them to be monsters, then they have a duty to be the most supreme monsters on earth. This does not mean brutishness, as practiced by lesser vampires, which they must suffer in the Sabbat, though Lasombra would never shy away from inflicting brutality on those who failed it. The Keepers never consider louts as candidates for the embrace. The clan's preference is for manipulators and schemers. They know that the Antediluvians cannot be bested by strength alone, for few are as powerful as the grandsires. Instead, the Lasombra seek to cultivate their followers into a weapon that can eventually overthrow those ancient and hated beings. One might wonder how any order exists among such schemers. The Lasombra publicly hold meetings, discussions, debates, just as any civilized group of vampires would. But secretly, the Lasombra are, let us say, directed by a secret coterie of the most powerful and ruthless of the clan, known as Les Amici Noctis, or the Friends of the Night. The Friends are the sole body within the clan that can impose a death sentence on another Lasombra. The Lasombra suffer from one minor difficulty in their nightly existence, a trifling inconvenience really. The Lasombra are unable to cast reflections on any surface. No Lasombra casts a reflection in a mirror, a photo, a video recording, or even on the surface of water. This does make personal grooming a bit of a challenge, but nothing that a keeper cannot overcome. Clan Tzimisce. There is power in earth, and in flesh, and in blood. They are eternal, yet ever-changing. These are the source of Clan Tzimisce's great power, and of their degeneration. In the Dark Ages, the Tzimisce were one of, if not the most powerful clan of vampires on Earth. They formed pacts with the spirits and gods of the Carpathians, fed them with sacrifices of blood, commanded their flesh to change according to their own wills, and ruled as terrifying voivodes to their mortal serfs and their progeny. Their enemies named them the Fiends, and it was a label that they wore proudly, for few could match their devious ingenuity when it came to altering flesh or inflicting suffering on their foes. To be sure, the Tzimisce adhered to their ancient and occasionally twisted codes of hospitality. Those accepted into a Tzimisce's domain found them the most gracious and accommodating of hosts. Yet for all of their manners, their inhumanity eventually became apparent in the strangeness of their haunted estates, the twistedness of their servants, and the screams of their prisoners upon whom they practiced their flesh-crafting arts. Honor and pride drove the Tzimisce, and some say it has driven them to ruin. The vast Tzimisce holdings of the East have fallen to war against external enemies, revolt by internal enemies, and finally, withdrawal from an increasingly hostile world in which the dark feudal lords of old no longer have a place. Like the Lasombra, the Tzimisce claim to have overthrown the founder of their clan and seized freedom against the tyranny of the ancients. The Tzimisce are one of the two founding clans of the Sabbat, and bear a great responsibility for the character of the sect. Where other vampires treat their humanity as a life raft to cling to in the stormy seas of the beast's fury, the Tzimisce regard humanity as a mere shell, a chrysalis against which they must struggle and break free from to become what they truly are, beautiful and terrible monsters, surpassing mortality and even Cain's curse, progressing onward to the next evolution of the Cainite condition, a true metamorphosis. Though they are no longer the undisputed lords of the lands beyond the forest, the Tzimisce remain viciously territorial. Whether it is their ancestral manses in the mountains and forests of Livonia, or their fortified flophouse in the ghetto, a Tzimisce protects its haven with servants, traps, magic, and their own blades and claws, as if the place were their own bodies. This bond with the land is both the power and weakness of the clan. A Tzimisce must sleep in at least 2 handfuls of earth important to them. Whether it is the earth of their mortal life or the land that they have ritually bonded themselves to matters little. A Tzimisce cut from the land loses the power of their blood until they become a withered, impotent husk. Clan Assamite. No clan epitomizes the jihad quite like the vampires of Clan Assamite. Denounced by nearly all other clans as maniacs, assassins, and diabolists, the progeny of Hakim have declared war on all other vampires, a war that will only end in the destruction of one side or the other. For their part, the Assamites regard their mission as a sacred duty placed upon them by their clan founder to judge and punish those vampires who abuse mortals, effectively an open death warrant on nearly all Cainites. For many centuries, the clan was an enigma to other vampires. Most did not know, or chose not to believe, that the Assamites actually existed. The Crusades changed that when the Rafiq, or warriors of the clan, went to war against the Crusader Knights of Europe. While the Crusades made the Assamites an obstacle, the Anarch Revolt turned the clan into an existential threat to the rest of the kindred. So terrifying were the packs of Assamite warriors diablerizing elders across Europe that the nascent Camarilla declared a blood hunt against the entire clan, the first and last time such a decree was issued. When the Camarilla discovered the Assamites' fortress of Alamut, the clan knew that they must sue for peace. The Tremere then placed a chain of blood sorcery upon the clan, separating them from their most cherished and horrific practice, diablerie. Some Assamites, rather than accept this indignity, joined the Sabbat. In the intervening centuries, the Assamites served as mercenaries and assassins to those kindred who were willing to pay for their services in blood. While technically barred by treaty from entering any Camarilla territory, the Assamites were quietly permitted to ply their trade in murder so long as they did not grow too brazen. With the resurrection of Hakim's herald and the shattering of the Tremere's curse upon their blood, the Assamites have returned to their old ways of ruthless hunting and diablerie. The Sabbat Assamites, once a hidden pillar of the sect, returned to Alamut to pay homage to Hakim's prophet, though what the prophet will command of the clan has left not only the Assamites, but all kindred in dread anticipation of the clan of assassins and their merciless jihad. The Assamites are unique in that they are afflicted with not one, but two curses leveled against their blood. The first is the best known, the addiction to diablerie. Once an Assamite tastes another vampire's blood, little can stop them from draining their unfortunate victim dry. The second is the darkening. Whereas diablerists are normally marked by blackened veins in their auras, an Assamite's flesh grows darker with both age and consumption of vampire's heart blood. Barring the usage of obfuscate, the oldest members of the clan resemble ambulatory obsidian statues. The followers of Set. The followers of Set are despised by nearly every other clan in the world of darkness. Not only are they purveyors of nearly every form of vice and corruption imaginable, but they reject the Canaanite origin myth in favor of a much darker progenitor, Set, the Egyptian god of storms, chaos, and war. Set, who in his lust for power slew his brother and king Osiris to claim the throne of Egypt. Set, who conquered the primordial serpent of darkness, Apep, and claimed its power as his own. In that vein, the Setites are not merely vampires, but the descendants of a god, his priests, and eventually his heirs. But Set wages war against the false gods of the world, whose servants are legion. Likewise, the followers of Set have battled against a multitude of foes, including mortals, vampires, lupines, mages, and immortals. Necessity forced them to adopt weapons beyond the Khopesh. Vice, addiction, dependence, and corruption have proven to be highly effective tools in bringing unbelievers into the Setites' coils. Ideally, they will join the faithful, though the followers of Set will gladly settle for controllable pawns. After all, everybody wants something. In addition to being incredibly manipulative, the followers of Set are also surprisingly scholarly. The Setites hoard knowledge and narcotics in equal measure, and not just as items of trade with their potential victims. Any bit of lore that will hasten the hour of Set's return is more valuable to the clan than gold or blood. Given their corruptive practices and their theosophic religion, the Setites are not welcomed in any domain, at least not openly. But like a snake in the grass, the Setites are skilled at operating clandestinely, building underground temples, drawing worshippers to them, and slowly coiling themselves around entire cities until they crush and swallow all goodness and hope. By devouring the great serpent Apep, Set became a creature of utmost spiritual darkness. His followers bear but a fraction of their grandsire's darkness, resulting in an aversion to bright lights, natural and unnatural. Additionally, the sun, the Eye of Ra, the grandfather who passed Set over in favor of Osiris, burns the Setites more intensely than he does other vampires. Clan Giovanni. The Giovanni can be likened to the magnificent family tombs and mausoleums of Italy, impressive, orderly, and even beautiful in a morbid way, but concealing centuries of carrion and rot. The Giovanni obsession with death has walked hand in hand with their skill in commerce. Their ability to commune with and enslave the restless dead was refined as the family became wealthier than the dreams of avarice. The former skill brought them to the attention of a vampire who sought to transcend life and death, Cappadocius. The patriarch of the Giovanni family, Augustus, a ruthless merchant and skilled necromancer, was invited to join the clan of death, and eagerly accepted, on the condition that Cappadocius would be his sire. Almost as soon as Augustus Giovanni joined the clan, he began plotting its downfall. Augustus betrayed and diablerized Cappadocius, and then purged all Cappadocians who were not members of the Giovanni family. The rest of Cain's brood denounced this massacre and branded the Giovanni as the devil kindred. Yet by an equally devilish stroke of luck, the Giovanni's purge of the Cappadocians coincided with the Anarch revolt, which the newly formed Camarilla was busily putting down. By the time that the Anarchs and Assamites were brought to heel, the Giovanni were so entrenched in their power that a war between them and the Camarilla would have been too costly for either side. So the Giovanni's usurpation was accepted as a fait accompli, and the Giovanni pledged to keep out of the jihad, while the Cappadocians were pushed into the dustbin of history in the name of peace. Since then, the Giovanni have, more or less, kept to their word, quietly amassing wealth and influence while attending to their numerous family businesses. And family is the most important thing to the Giovanni. No one who is not a member of the Giovanni family or one of its cadet branches may be considered for the embrace, typically after a period of service as a ghoul. Giovanni referred to this system of apprenticeship as the proxy kiss. These twin loyalties of mortal and vampire blood ensure the loyalty of the family and the clan. But the Giovanni's family and business are much darker than even other kindred realize. Many Giovanni must suffer servitude to their seniors, in both the family and the clan, in whatever form may be required. The other is the collection of souls. The Giovanni know the traits and customs of the restless dead, how they may be utilized and controlled. In addition to mortals and ghouls, the Giovanni crypts are often protected by small armies of ghosts and shambling zombu. The family spreads death and destruction throughout the world like a farmer plants seeds, so that they can reap even more souls by the dozens, hundreds, and thousands. What they intend with this rich crop of death is one of the most closely guarded secrets of the clan. The Giovanni blood, however, has a rather undesirable side effect. Where the typical vampire's bite can cause euphoria in its victims, mortals who fall under a Giovanni's fangs suffer excruciating pain. In fact, the kiss of a Giovanni is so painful that some mortals have died from shock. But a new corpse is fresh material for another zombu, so lemons from lemonade and all that. Clan Ravnos. The Ravnos are a clan with an unsavory reputation among nearly all kindred. They are universally mistrusted for their clan-wide penchant to deceive, or at least gain advantage over others. They are nomads, traitors, soothsayers, mercenaries, and ill-omened, regardless of their motives. They acknowledge few rules that do not directly benefit them, and only keep faith with others of their clan by the unusual codes of conduct that govern them. In general, princes who cannot drive the Ravnos from their domains outright keep them under close watch. The origin of the Ravnos is a mystery to most of the clan. The Ravnos of Europe believe that they are connected to the Roma, or gypsies of Eastern Europe, a theory with some merit as most European Ravnos refuse to embrace those who are not Roma, though there have been writings describing vampires who possess similar nature and powers to the Ravnos in Northern Europe, Central Asia, and North Africa. The elders of the clan hold their tongues about the true origins of the Ravnos because it is a dark tale, unbelievable even among a clan of deceivers, a tale of a war between the gods and the demons who once served them, of a bloodthirsty avenging monster who could bend the fabric of creation to his will and raised up others like him to fight against the demons. The problem is, the rare few Ravnos who have investigated this extraordinary tale, who have traced the clan's long road out of the Indian subcontinent, were confronted with the terrifying truth. The war was not only real, it was still being fought by the Ravnos who remained in India against the demon people, or the Ashura Tizaya, as the Indian Ravnos called them. The deceivers, as the Ravnos are also known, twist the truth to suit their desires, usually in service to the vices that seem to run across the entire clan. But they can also twist the perceptions of their targets, and produce illusions of varying complexity and effectiveness. Some of these illusions placed in the minds of a Ravnos' target can even have the same effect as the real thing. In past nights, the Ravnos acted as merchants, traders, spies, and mercenaries. Their disinterest in making permanent residences anywhere and their paradoxical ethics meant that they had few scruples about what they would do, and more importantly, to whom they would do it. In modern knights, the Ravnos tend to do as much as a prince is willing to let them get away with, though there is a delicate balance. Ravnos regard other vampires and mortals as marks, to be taken for whatever they have, yet they are very prickly in matters of personal and family honor. In other words, a group of pissed-off Ravnos working together can destabilize a domain with terrifying speed. Depending on the time in which one encountered the Ravnos, they may have been a stable clan, or one teetering on the precipice of extinction, thanks in no small part to the awakening of the antediluvian of their clan, whose considerable hunger may have proven to be their downfall. And that was an overview of the 13 modern clans of Vampire the Masquerade. What's interesting about the clans is that before the Anarch Revolt, they were effectively sects in their own right, some more so than others, which is why the clans have, or had, their own internal cultures, rules, philosophies, and goals. This is not surprising given that, until relatively recently, in vampire terms, the last 5 centuries, clans did not share settlements, towns, cities, or counties with those not of their brood. Allowing someone outside of their clan was the exception, a potential risk to their own security and resources. But with the rise of great metropoli and the increases in vampire and mortal populations, along with the establishment of sect authority, both the Camarilla and the Sabbat, what was once considered undesirable is now unavoidable. However, the clans still retain some of their internal organization. Specifically, the Ventrue, the Tremere, Nosferatu, and Lasombra, effectively functioning as sects within the sect, making sure that what's good for the sect is also good for the clan, and vice versa, if convenient. But that's all I have for this video. Until next time, which won't be as long as my last foray into the underworld.